The alarms were still blaring when Ambassador David Miller realized he'd accidentally started an interstellar war. To repeat. The station's cheerful, automated voice announced, "Human ambassador has threatened mass equine consumption, detonation of explosives, and avian genocide. Please remain calm." "I didn't threaten anything," David shouted over the noise. But the three Vrellian diplomats had already taken cover behind their chairs, and a security team was pointing weapons at him from the doorway. This was definitely not in the training manual. 6 minutes earlier, David had prepared for this moment with 6 months of training and enough diplomatic briefings to make his brain hurt. What he hadn't prepared for was the conference room chairs being made of something that hummed when you sat in it, or the fact that Vrellians wore so much ceremonial jewelry they jingled when they moved, or that he'd be this nervous. "Call me David," he said, shaking hands with Ambassador Crix, a tall Vrellian whose robe appeared to shift colors when he moved. "Honestly, I'm so excited to be here. I barely slept last night." The translators, all three Vrellians, wore blinked in unison. "We share your enthusiasm," Crix said with extreme formality. "This represents a momentous occasion for—" "Sorry," interrupted Science Officer Pleam, a shorter Vrellian frantically tapping a handheld device. "My translator's malfunctioning. Just need a moment to—" "No worries," David said. "Shall we break the ice?" 3 aliens leaped to their feet. "Break what ice?" Crix's voice cracked. "Where?" Cultural liaison Zash was already at a wall panel. "Environmental diagnostics show no frozen water. Temperature stable. Is there a hull breach?" Pleam demanded. David held up his hands. "No, it's an expression. I just meant let's start talking." They slowly sat back down. "Your language is very confusing," Crix said stiffly. "Yeah, sorry. Don't worry. It's not a big deal." The translators blinked. All 3 Vrellians stared. "Not a large commercial transaction?" Zash asked slowly. "What transaction?" David blinked. "What? I just meant—" "Oh no," Pleam whispered, looking at his device. "Oh no, no, no. What's— oh no?" David asked. Pleam looked up, his large eyes conveying pure panic. "The translator's not just broken. It's translating your idioms literally. How bad is that?" "You should only say things that are completely, literally, factual." David nodded. "Okay, I can do that. I'm dying to learn about." Crix slammed a big red button on the table. Lights started flashing. The door burst open and 3 Vrellian medics charged in with a floating stretcher covered in beeping equipment. "Who is dying?" the lead medic bellowed, waving a scanner. "Report symptoms." "Nobody's dying." David stood up. "I'm fine." The medic scanned him. Human vital signs. Normal. Perfect health. He looked at Pleam accusingly. "Why did he say he's dying?" "It's an expression," David said. "I meant I'm really interested." The medic slowly lowered his scanner. "Your species expresses enthusiasm by claiming to be dying?" "When you put it that way, it sounds weird." "It sounds like species-wide anxiety disorder." The medic made a note on his device. "I'm flagging this for psychological review." After they left, Crix straightened his robe. "Perhaps we should speak very literally." "Great idea," David said. "Let's kill 2 birds with 1 stone and—" Different alarms. A security officer burst in, weapon drawn. "Report of planned avian violence," the officer barked. "Using stones as weapons?" "I'm not killing any birds," David protested. "I'm vegetarian. For crying out loud," the translator chirped. Every Vrellian stared. "You consume plants for the purpose of producing loud weeping?" The officer asked slowly. "Do humans cry about vegetables?" Zash looked concerned. "Is this a religious ritual?" Crix asked. "Also inefficient," Pleam added. "Crying would interfere with digestion." The officer holstered his weapon. "I'm filing this under cultural misunderstanding, but maybe consider therapy. The vegetable crying thing seems significant." David put his head in his hands after the officer left. "This is going great. Perhaps no more metaphors?" Crix suggested. "Absolutely. This just got off on the wrong foot." All 3 aliens immediately looked at his feet. "Which foot is wrong?" Zash pulled out a scanner. "They look symmetrical." Do humans have right feet and wrong feet? Pleem was taking notes. My feet are both fine, David shouted. Can we please just take a break and get something to eat? I'm starving. I could eat a horse. The security officer burst back in, weapon drawn. Human threatens equine consumption, every Vrellian gasped. A whole horse? Crick stammered. They weigh 500 kilograms. Zash had a calculator out. Human stomach capacity, 1 liter. The volumetric discrepancy is impossible, unless, she paled, humans have dimensional pocket stomachs. I don't eat horses, David yelled. 0 horses. It's hyperbole, Pleem's translator chirped. Hyperbole, ancient Earth siege weapon. There was a beat of silence. What? David grabbed his translator. No. That's a catapult. Hyperbole is exaggeration. Human now discusses military weapons, the officer said into his comm. Upgrading to Code Orange. What's Code Orange? 1 level below. Imminent planetary destruction. David laughed despite himself. This is perfect. I'm having a blast here. Every alarm in the station activated. Explosive device detected, the cheerful automated voice announced. Evacuating. Have a nice day. In the present, Crix was on the floor behind his color-shifting robe. Zash had activated some kind of energy shield. Pleem was frantically working on his translator while also cowering. Where is the bomb? The security officer demanded. David, still standing because he was the only person who knew he wasn't dangerous, looked around at the chaos and started laughing, really laughing. The kind where you can't breathe. You're all driving me up the wall, he gasped. New alarms. A team of engineers in hazmat suits burst in. Who's climbing the walls? The lead engineer shouted, We have no approved maintenance! There's no climbing! Pleem yelled from his protective position. It's another expression! David was doubled over. Stop! My sides are splitting. The medical team rushed back in. Critical injury! The human's torso is separating. I'm just laughing. David wheezed. This whole thing is costing an arm and a leg. Pleem pulled out a calculator. Payment in severed limbs? That's barbaric. This is the most violent negotiation I've ever seen, Zash said from behind her shield. And I once mediated between carnivorous hive minds and pacifist monks. David wiped his eyes. I need to pull myself together. He mimed, pulling his hands toward his chest. Every Vrellian stopped moving. Is he demonstrating dismemberment? Zash whispered. Threat display! The security officer aimed his weapon. No! David dropped his hands. I meant calm down. Why didn't you say that? Crix asked from the floor. I thought I did. Pleem, who'd been desperately working on his translator, suddenly made a weird whistling sound. He was laughing. Pleem? Zash asked. Are you malfunctioning? No. Don't you see? Pleem's whistling grew louder. David, what does kicked the bucket mean? Died, stopped working, and break the ice? Start a conversation comfortably. And you don't actually eat horses. Never even seen one in person. Pleem's laughter intensified. It's brilliant. Humans have a whole secondary communication layer. Literal words, metaphorical meanings. Crix, slowly standing and brushing off his robe, looked skeptical. That seems unnecessarily complicated. Do Vrellians not have expressions? David asked hopefully. Zash thought. When something's easy, we say it slides like a greasel. What's a greasel? A slug creature covered in mucus. David grinned. So nothing actually slides? Zash opened her mouth, closed it. Oh, when someone's intelligent, Pleem added excitedly. We say they have the wisdom of the ancient stones. But stones aren't wise, David pointed out. They're rocks. Long pause. We also speak in metaphors, Crix admitted quietly. The security officer holstered his weapon. Wait, when my commander says I have the reflexes of a sleeping grobnak, he doesn't mean I'm unconscious? What's a grobnak? Sleeps 23 hours daily. The officer's 3 eyes widened. Oh, I need to apologize to my supervisor, the medic said quietly. When we say someone shines like the twin suns, they're not literally emitting photons? Correct, Pleem confirmed. This explains so many confusing medical reports. David gestured to chairs. Everyone sat. The emergency teams filed out, looking embarrassed. "So we all use ridiculous metaphors," David said. "Why?" Zash asked. "Makes language interesting?" "When I say break the ice to another human, they understand immediately. It's like a password proving we're part of the same culture." Linguistic marker of cultural belonging, Pleam said thoughtfully, requires shared context, not just vocabulary. Exactly. Now you know our codes, and we know yours. When someone's authoritative, Crick said, we say they have the voice of the mountain. We say voice like a foghorn, David replied. Loud warning device on ships. When someone's clumsy, Zash offered, they have the grace of a newborn crag beast. 16 legs. Terrible balance. David laughed. We say bull in a china shop. Large aggressive animal in a store full of delicate dishes. When something's impossible, Pleam said. We say teach quantum physics to a rock. When pigs fly, David countered. Farm animals? Can't fly? Crick smiled. Actually smiled. This is absurd. Why do we do this? Because literal language is boring, David suggested. Because it's fun, Zash said slowly. Thinking about sliding like a greasel is more entertaining than just easy. You know what? David said. I'd call this meeting a success, even though it got off on the wrong foot, Cricks asked, trying not to laugh. Especially because of that. Pleam held up his translator proudly. I programmed metaphor recognition mode. It analyzes patterns to determine literal versus figurative. Will that work? Probably not. But I prefer learning the hard way, Pleam paused. And by hard way, I mean difficult method, not physically rigid. We know. Zash grinned. They spent the next hour sharing idioms and laughing. David learned Vrellians had 17 ways to insult someone's intelligence, and that the insight of processed nutrients was their polite way of calling someone shit for brains. The Vrellians learned humans had 40 ways to say someone was stupid, which Pleam found statistically fascinating. When David finally left, his report was simple. First contact successful. Communication issues resolved. We're all equally weird. Recommend sending idiom dictionary. Also recommend sending someone actually good at this job. But we made friends, so calling it a win. In the Vrellian archives, Cricks filed his report. Humans speak in riddles and contradictions. They laugh at danger, consume poison for recreation, and keep predators as pets. Recommend treating with caution and humor. Also recommend learning Earth phrases immediately. They are, as humans say, growing on me. Addendum. Confirmed we don't literally grow on each other. That would be fungal infection. See attached metaphor guide. The best part wasn't the treaties or trade agreements that followed. It was the shared revelation that every species, no matter how advanced, was equally capable of being ridiculous. And that, as David said later, was worth its weight in gold. Which still confused the Vrellians, because words don't weigh anything. But they were learning, and laughing while they did it.